Hoping to catch a taxi cab in Des Moines today, you might have a tough time just finding one. That's because cab drivers are pulling their cabs off the streets, protesting higher dispatch fees that they say are forcing them out of business. Eileen Wickstead tonight at 6 will have a live eye report on the situation. And Ralph Nader comes to town unloading some harsh criticism of Iowa's insurance industry. These stories plus weather and sports in 1/2 hour.
Welcome or not, President Reagan will send monitors to the Philippine elections. Eastern Airlines financial slide continues. Congresswoman Fiedler of California indicted on charges of political bribery.
NBC Nightly News with Tom Brokaw.
Good evening, I'm Roger Mudd in New York. Tom Brokaw is on assignment. The Philippine presidential election scheduled for February 7th tonight seems almost important in Washington as a New Hampshire primary. President Reagan tonight agreed to send an official delegation to the Philippine election composed of both Democrats and Republicans from the Congress. It will be headed by Republican Senator Richard Lugar of Indiana, chairman of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. Ann Garrels reports from Washington.
Because of serious concerns about the fairness of the election, Senator Lugar, chairman of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, believes U.S. observers should be there, and he's willing to go.
An official American delegation will demonstrate our support for democracy in the Philippines. I hope it will also make a small but valuable contribution to an election worthy of the Filipino people.
But Lugar and the administration fear a repeat of the fraud which has plagued every other Philippines election. Foreign observers forbidden to watch the actual voting close up will not be able to attest to the fairness of the process. The Philippines foreign minister has been here this week explaining how foolproof the elections will be. But according to one administration official, he hasn't fooled anyone. Officials believe the commission running the elections is stacked with Marcos supporters. Marcos has forbidden a preliminary count by neutral observers, which would eliminate the last-minute ballot stuffing.
If it is seen as unfair, we think that it will substantially worsen the situation in the Philippines. In particular, encourage more people to turn to radical alternatives and specifically to the communists.
And even if these elections are free and fair, there's concern that Filipinos will not believe it, that whoever wins will not have the mandate the U.S. believes is so important. Whoever wins, the U.S. faces problems. Marcos may be even more reluctant than he is now to carry out economic and military reforms. His opponent, Corazon Aquino, has no political experience and may face domestic pressures to close down the 2 U.S. bases. Because the bases are crucial, the administration will have to work with whoever wins. If the elections are fair, it will be difficult. If there's fraud, officials predict a nightmare. Ann Garrels, NBC News, the State Department.
With the election just 2 weeks off, Marcos today announced consumer price cuts averaging 11%. Already he has raised government salaries and reduced government housing rents. Marcos himself did no campaigning today, but the government television spent 15 minutes repeating his claims that he was a World War II resistance hero, claims that yesterday were described in the New York Times as fraudulent and absurd. For her part, opposition candidate Corazon Aquino called Marcos a cheater, stealer, and killer, and took steps to force better coverage of her news campaign. Steve Mallory reports.
The issue here is fairness.
Lawyers for Corazon Aquino were in court unsuccessfully trying to get tapes of newscasts from government TV. The tapes, they said, would prove the government network was denying Mrs. Aquino equal time.
But when the government says that reminiscent of the Nixon days, they now say that the tapes have been erased. What are we supposed to do?
Your information. President Marcos, speaking today at a campaign rally here in Quezon City, assailed the opposition's flippant stand on crucial issues.
Government TV is the only network that broadcasts nationwide. President Marcos's rallies receive extensive coverage. Mrs. Aquino's positions on the issues and her campaign are virtually ignored. Newspaper editor Luis Beltran.
Mr. Marcos and his cronies have had 20 years to buy up all of the radio and television stations in this country. Now they own it. They're not about to let loose and let Mrs. Aquino have access to it.
Aquino rallies like this one today don't make the evening news. Unless you were there, you wouldn't know how well her campaign is going. The government blames Aquino's press staff.
And I understand that they have shown a little hesitance in allowing members of the media whom they consider to be establishment press to join them on their forays.
It doesn't stop at news. When Aquino tried to get her commercials aired, showing how the government deals with demonstrators, there were more obstacles. First, clearing censorship, then stations' resistance. Only in the past 2 days, under legal pressure, did some local stations relent, but not the government network.
Palita na. Vote Aquino. Laurel.
Washington looks at this election as a test of democracy in the Philippines. How the press treats Mrs. Aquino is one of the questions. So far, U.S. officials say they're disappointed. Steve Mallory, NBC News, Manila.
Colonel Muammar Gaddafi of Libya said today he has put his Navy and Air Force on total alert, but around Tripoli at least there were no visible signs of it. Gaddafi said the military operation by the U.S. 6th Fleet close to his airspace was an aggressive provocation. He said America is practicing state-organized terrorism. There are 20 ships, including 2 aircraft carriers in the U.S. flotilla, which is cruising about 120 miles north of the Libyan coastline, an obvious show of strength for Gaddafi's benefit. Also coming up on our broadcast tonight, Robert Hager reports on the growing financial trouble at Eastern Airlines. Lisa Myers reports from Dartmouth College on the discord and disturbance at the traditional and once tranquil campus. And Jim Cummins takes a second look at quarterback Jim McMahon, Peck's bad boy of football.
Hope you like sugar, because this box contains not 1, not 2, but 6 added teaspoons. This has 10, and this 18. And spoon-size shredded wheat, none. When you shred the wheat for better toasting, it tastes great naturally. So it goes against our grain to add sugar, or even salt. And now there's Nabisco Shredded Wheaten Bran, the first bran cereal with no added sugar or salt.
Nabisco! Don't worry about me. I go through floods to bring you this offer.
What a day that was. We wanted to sell our house fast and for the right price, but Kim from our Century 21 office kept saying, don't worry, and she just wouldn't give up.
And then on the worst day ever, she brought us the best offer of all. How do you find people like that?
All you gotta do is pick up the phone.
The Century 21 Real Estate Corporation, a member of the Metropolitan Life family of companies.
Takes these hands to keep this ride going. They slow her down, they speed her up, they even make music. So when they hurt, can't let arthritis pain get in the way. Good, strong Anacin takes care of that.
Anacin, 23% more medicine than regular pain relievers to relieve minor arthritis pain for hours.
Anacin works.
Anacin, more medicine. See Sunday's paper for special savings on Anacin and maximum strength Anacin.
After a journey of 8 years and 3 billion miles, Voyager II today made its closest approach to Uranus, passing about 50,000 miles away. Until now, the planet has been a mystery to us, but scientists hope to learn from the pictures Voyager is taking. Besides the planet itself, scientists are studying its thin frozen rings and its many moons. Much better quality pictures are expected to be ready in a few days. The airline industry has another merger shaping up tonight. Northwest Orient Airlines is buying Republic for almost $900 million. The new operation will serve 100 cities and employ more than 30,000 people. The new company will be number 3 in the industry behind United and American, pushing Eastern down to 4th. Eastern itself is in another turbulent period, battling severe financial problems. Robert Hager reports tonight that the outlook is uncertain.
Eastern's flight attendants learned this week the wings they earn every day will be worth less. Their pay being cut 20%. Ticket agents and clerks got the same bad news. Pilots and mechanics are also expecting cuts. And 1,000 flight attendants, including Douglas Trudeau, got layoff notices.
Yes, I knew that we were going to take a pay cut, but I had no earthly idea that I would be out of a job 2 weeks later.
Except for last year, Eastern has been losing money since 1979 and now faces its 3rd financial crisis in 4 years. The line owes $2.5 billion, and now banks are threatening to call in those loans next month unless Eastern puts its financial house in order. Chairman Frank Borman argues that Eastern's wages are higher than those of many lines, and cutting them is the only way of saving enough money. A lot of Wall Street analysts agree, pointing out that by taking strikes, other lines such as United, Pan Am, and World won permanent pay cuts from employees. Eastern has avoided a strike so far, but in the past has only managed to get employees to agree to temporary cuts. All this as Eastern's non-union competitors cut into revenues. New York Air has just announced a $1 million campaign to take business from the Eastern Shuttle. People Express has slashed fares to Florida. Continental has invaded Eastern's Kansas City hub. Is Eastern out to bust its unions? Eastern's Jerry Cosley.
There's absolutely no thought of busting a union. What we do want to do is bust the old traditions that are slowly sinking this airline. If we don't get it fixed, then Eastern's not going to make it.
But the unions have vowed to fight. The flight attendants, Robert Callahan.
In the boardrooms, in the banks, in the media, on Wall Street, with the public, and maybe in the streets if we have.
Many analysts feel some way out will be found. But if things should fall apart, Eastern could become the biggest airline yet to go belly up. Robert Hager, NBC News, Washington.
The National Labor Relations Board, which usually handles other people's labor disputes, has one of its own tonight. About 200 lawyers who work for the agency walked a picket line, claiming recent White House appointees are demanding reductions in job protection and job opportunities that were granted in previous contracts. Federal workers are prohibited from striking, and a federal mediator has been called in on this one. PepsiCo made it official today. It has agreed to buy most of the 7-Up company for $380 million in cash. The deal means that number 2 Pepsi and number 3 7-Up will have a combined market share of 35%, compared to the 39% for Coca-Cola.
I'm not a doctor, but I play one on TV. And when many adults get a cough, they play doctor at home. They treat their cough with the same medicine they originally bought for their children. They need one of the adult formulas from Vicks for the coughs adults get, with the strength adults need. Formula 44 for coughs, 44D for coughs with congestion, and Formula 44M for coughs with congestion and a raw, irritated throat. The adult formulas. You can't buy anything more effective.
The adult formulas from Vicks, of course.
You won't believe how great it holds your lower dentures.
It's extra hold for lowers.
You won't believe how great it holds your lower dentures.
It's extra hold, and it's new from Fasteeth. You won't believe how great it holds your lowers.
You've been traded, Rolaids. For acid and gas, your performance is not up to tempo.
For better relief from acid and gas, switch to Soft Tempo. With 75% more acid-relieving medicine than the leading tablet. Switch to better relief. Switch to Soft Tempo.
This important announcement from A.H. Robbins concerns the use of the Dalkon Shield IUD, a birth control device. Whether or not you know of any injury resulting from this product, you must act now, or you will lose your right to ever make a claim. To make a claim, mail a postcard or letter with your full name and complete address to the court at the address below. It must be received by April 30th, 1986.
There was a bitter edge today at Dartmouth College that went far beyond the cold of the New England winter. Classes were canceled. Students and faculty met to talk about charges that racism and sexism thrive on the Ivy League campus. NBC's Lisa Myers reports tonight how political division among students has led to vandalism and protest.
On the night of Martin Luther King's birthday, 15 conservative students took sledgehammers to these shanties, built on the college green to protest apartheid. That provoked a 2-day sit-in by blacks, women, and homosexuals who are in the minority at Dartmouth. They demanded today's session.
The festering, putrid sore of racism is alive and well at Dartmouth College.
The college president agreed. Many spoke of their pain, alienation, anger, sometimes even fear.
The tactics had the same impact used as those used by the KKK in their attacks against Jews, Catholics, and blacks in this country.
And until Tuesday morning, I was content to be passive, but no more.
The shanty incident is only the latest in a series of attacks against Jews, gays, women, and blacks at Dartmouth. Only 7 years ago, classes were suspended because of a similar racial slur against American Indians. In the middle of it all is the Dartmouth Review, a conservative privately funded newspaper which opposes affirmative action and whose members take credit for the shanty incident.
Racism is not here at Dartmouth, no matter what they say.
No one's insensitive to those people's needs. The point is that those people don't deserve special treatment.
But blacks say they often encounter open hostility.
And we waved at someone in the window. Your freshman year, you're always idealistic. And he looked at us and said, "Niggers, why don't you go home? Or better yet, why don't you go back to Africa?"
The administration promises disciplinary action against the students who destroyed the shanties and a campaign against racism. But some blacks say they won't wait. They plan to transfer to other schools. Lisa Myers, NBC News, Hanover, New Hampshire.
While racism and apartheid were being debated in New Hampshire, those issues were momentarily eclipsed in South Africa by fighting among rival black tribes. Police said today 42 people had been killed with another 7,000 left homeless. NBC's John Cochran reports tonight that the Zulus and the Pandos were battling for land and survival.
It looks like a familiar scene. Homeless people returning to their villages after a disaster, trying to salvage what they can. But this is not their village. These people are looters. They belong to South Africa's largest tribe, the Zulus. The village belonged to a much smaller tribe, the Pandos. The Zulus burned them out. The only Pandos left behind are dead. The Zulus claim this is their land, that the Pandos were illegal squatters. The Pandos came here because, like many blacks, they are desperately poor and couldn't survive in the homeland assigned to them by whites. John Kane Berman, head of South Africa's Race Relations Institute.
There's a great shortage of land for black people in South Africa. 75% of the people are supposed to confine themselves to 13 or 14% of the land.
Tribal rivalries over land have made it almost impossible for blacks to organize effectively against whites. If there is one black leader who could unite tribes and factions, it is probably Nelson Mandela, but he has been in jail for 23 years. Today, his wife, Winnie, received the Robert F. Kennedy Human Rights Award in a white suburb. Mrs. Mandela accepted the award by attacking President Reagan.
That the American government is determined at all costs to maintain and support the racist white regime in South Africa.
Many blacks, like Winnie Mandela, deplore tribal warfare over land rights. The real enemy, they claim, is the white man, who reserved the most and the best land for himself. John Cochran, NBC News, Johannesburg.
Hardline communist rebels were reported to be in full control of South Yemen's capital, Aden, today after 11 days of bitter fighting. Most foreigners have now gotten out. With the fighting going on behind them, people waited on the beach for boats to take them to the Royal Yacht Britannia. These pictures were shot by a British naval officer. On board the Britannia, the royal dining room became a mess hall for hundreds, while down below, all but the Queen's bedroom and dining room were filled with sleeping people. There was a fire at sea today. It broke out on a Greek oil tanker after it collided with a fishing trawler in the North Sea off the coast of England. The tanker leaked crude oil from a hole in its side, but heavy seas broke up the oil, and officials said there was little danger of pollution along the British coast. Crew members were reported safe, most evacuated by helicopter. Tonight, the ship was wallowing in severe winds.
Breakfast in a tropical paradise. Great idea.
Call it native brilliance.
Brilliance? But you forget the name of your favorite cereal.
With all this tropical fruit, it's fruit and...
Yeah?
Post Fruit and Fiber Tropical Fruit. Tastes so good you forget the fiber. Now 20% more fiber with sunny pineapple, crunchy banana chips, and coconut. So all you remember is...
It's fruit and tropical fruit.
Lost in paradise.
Post Fruit and Fiber cereal. Tastes so good you forget the fiber.
Well, at least one of them's gold.
How about some coffee? It's decaffeinated.
Half a cup's fine.
You drink decaf.
Sure, and when I find one that's got a full flavor, I'll have a full cup.
This one does.
Brim?
It's got full, rich flavor.
Now this is a find. Fill it to the rim.
With the full, rich taste of Brim decaffeinated coffee.
Thanks a lot, Citibank. Ordinary Visa and MasterCards won't do. No, Citibank always has to be better. Just by using them, my son earns bonuses called Citi Dollars. They save him up to 40% on nice gifts. But does he get me a grandfather clock or a colored television? No, not my son. Come on, Mom!
come on, just a few more miles, Mom. Keep pedaling down that
Citibank's Visa and MasterCard. It's Citibank that makes them better.
Congresswoman Bobby Fiedler of Los Angeles has been one of the front runners in the Republican primary to face Democratic Senator Alan Cranston in November. But as NBC's Don Oliver reports tonight, Fiedler now faces felony charges of trying to pay off another candidate to drop out of the race.
Bobby Fiedler and Paul Clark, case number A77.
Congresswoman Bobby Fiedler and her top aide in criminal court this morning facing charges of political bribery. Fiedler rose to local prominence in the 1970s for her opposition to busing for school integration in the San Fernando Valley of Los Angeles.
I am officially declaring my candidacy for the United States Congress.
She was elected to Congress in 1980 and this year became a candidate for the Republican nomination for the U.S. Senate. One of her 8 opponents is State Senator Ed Davis, former police chief of Los Angeles. The grand jury indictment alleges Fiedler and her aide attempted to bribe Davis to drop out of the race.
Obviously, the district attorney's office would not have pursued this matter this far if we didn't believe that there was strong evidence on it.
This whole thing is ridiculous. I've done nothing wrong, and I don't believe anyone in my campaign has done anything wrong. We are the victims.
At a news conference, Fiedler and aide Paul Clark said the charges were a despicable political trick, but they said their attorney would not let them answer any questions about the alleged bribe. Davis said an offer of $100,000 to pay his campaign debts if he'd drop out was made to one of his aides last November.
There was never any discussion whatsoever on the part of our campaign with anyone about ever withdrawing from the campaign.
Have you ever considered withdrawing?
Never.
The Davis campaign got in touch with one of his supporters, a district attorney in a neighboring county.
I told them that it should be reported to the appropriate law enforcement agency and that since I now had the information that I would do so.
Republican Party officials believe it will be very difficult for Congresswoman Fiedler to continue her Senate campaign while under indictment, but she says she has no intention of quitting the race. Don Oliver, NBC News, Los Angeles.
Fresh from a speech before New York conservatives last night, Vice President George Bush today continued courting his party's right wing with a glowing tribute to the Reverend Jerry Falwell. Mr. Bush said he welcomes the fundamentalist movement in politics, calling it a great revival of an old American tradition, and he said American political life has a crying need for Falwell's moral vision. The Internal Revenue Service said today that its commissioner, Roscoe Egger, is leaving after 5 years. Egger cracked down on tax cheats and abusive tax shelters, but he was also criticized for foul-ups in processing last year's returns, and as a result, Egger himself said 1985 was the worst year in the history of the IRS. 5-year-old Buddy Studer was watching television with a babysitter one night in his father's home in Covington, Kentucky, when he looked up and saw himself on TV. The program was about missing children.
Tell us about that. What did you see on television? It was me. Who's this?
Buddy was reunited with his mother today after the babysitter notified police. Buddy's father has been charged with kidnapping, although a judge said the whole case needs more investigation. He said Buddy will stay in a church home until the case is settled. Actor Gordon McRae died today in Lincoln, Nebraska after a 2-week illness. He was 64 and had a long career on Broadway and in Hollywood. And in recent years, he was a national spokesman in the fight against alcoholism. He will always be remembered for his baritone voice in the movie adaptations of such musicals as Carousel and Oklahoma.
What a beautiful morning, oh, what a beautiful day. I got a beautiful feeling, everything's going my way.
Ooh, I've got an awful headache. Where's my extra strength bufferin?
Oh, I borrowed it from my back, all this lifting. Then Jim took it for a stiff elbow.
Backache? Stiff elbows? Jim, got my bufferin?
Dave took it. Sore pitching arm.
My bufferin for all that.
For headaches and a whole lot more, Extra Strength Bufferin goes to the heart of the pain with the strongest dose of pain reliever you can buy. Nothing relieves more aches and pains.
Ah, my bufferin.
For headaches and a whole lot more, Extra Strength Bufferin, also in regular strength from Bristol-Myers.
City feet, country feet, fleet feet, neat feet.
No matter how you treat your feet, Dr. Scholl's makes you feel like dancing with double comfort air pillow insoles. Hidden comfort half insoles for high heel shoes. Workday insoles for hard working feet. Scenic Fresh Step insoles.
Tired feet, active feet.
Dr. Scholl's has all kinds of comfort for all kinds of feet. Right here.
Dr. Scholl's makes you feel like dancing.
Will the Graham-Rudman law really reduce the deficit? Will taxes be increased? Finance Chief Senator Bob Packwood and the powerful Budget Committee Senator Ernest Hollings meet the press Sunday.
Traps. I hate them, and they don't always work. So I use Decon rat and mouse killers. They're dead sure to kill. Rats in mice simply eat Decon and die. So why take chances? Use Decon baits. Dead sure to kill.
Now there's an antacid that's ideal for us women, new calcitrol. It not only neutralizes more acid than Malox Plus or regular Mylanta, it gives us even more calcium than Tums. New calcitrol. It's the ideal antacid for women.
Maybe it's something about being a quarterback that takes leadership and brass and flair. Think of Joe Namath and Joe Theismann and Bob Greasy and other Super Bowl greats. Now there's Jim McMahon. NBC's Jim Cummins has a profile of the rock and roll heart of the Chicago Bears.
He is the man with the mohawk, the wraparound sunglasses, the blues brother from Chicago. Outrageous, audacious, and rebellious.
I'm the punky QB known as McMahon. When I hit the turf, I've got no plan.
He is the rock and roll quarterback who thrives on touchdowns and butting heads with anybody who tries to tell him what to do. Just ask an expert, his mom.
From about the age of 2 or 3, he was always defiant.
And still is, ignoring his coaches, calling his own plays, and gleefully defying a league rule against spiking the ball after a touchdown. That one cost his team 5 yards.
I think that's a stupid rule, you know. You gotta be able to celebrate a little bit. That's, I don't care. We'll take the 5 yards every time.
McMahon loves beer and hates practice.
Looks like you're going to have virtually no practice time.
No. Breaks my heart.
Coach Mike Ditka says his wacky quarterback is driving him crazy.
He's amazing.
Amazing because McMahon threw 3 touchdown passes in less than 7 minutes of one game, and yet is best remembered for the headband he wore in another, needling NFL Commissioner Pete Rozelle. Dan Plater is McMahon's best friend.
Well, he's an intensely private person underneath that flashy, exterior. He just refuses to let anybody run his life. A lot of people are just worried about what everybody else thinks. I can give a damn what everybody else thinks. I'm having fun.
The headband craziness is catching on, at least in Chicago, and Roy, Utah, McMahon's hometown, where they had a pep rally for him the other day. His former coach says McMahon is crazy like a fox.
Personally, I think it's making Jim money.
And his dad says,
A lot of what Jim does is an act, but by the same token, he is a little bit zany.
Zany enough to tell the world he has a pain in the posterior and show it off to a photographer. But those who know him best expect McMahon will be ready to play Sunday.
It's showtime for him when you take the field, you know. He's got an act to perform, and he goes out and does it.
But nobody can predict what kind of act Jim McMahon will perform.
That's why you all got here on the double to catch me doing the Super Bowl shuffle.
Jim Cummins, NBC News, Chicago.
That's Nightly News for Friday. Tom Brokaw will be back on Monday. I'm Roger Mudd in New York. Good night.
Tonight's an entertainment spectacular with all your Disney friends, plus John Ritter and Laura Branigan. And on Knight Rider, an evil magician wants Michael to disappear permanently. Then on Miami Vice, a wedding day hit leaves Crockett with a grudge.
I want to chase it.
Miami Vice.
Tonight.
Next from News Center 13.
Des Moines taxi cabs may be going out on strike. We'll have a live eye report.
Consumer advocate Ralph Nader speaks out on insurance.
And Des Moines police search for a bank robber.
These stories plus a cold forecast from Mike Lozano and more Super Bowl hype from Jeff, all coming up next.
I need Shop Hy-Vee.
For entertaining friends or for entertaining yourself, try Doritos tortilla chips, now $1.89 a 1-pound bag. Golden ripe bananas, 22 cents a pound. Honey Hill sliced peaches, 69 cents. And Linden Farms frozen hash browns, 77 cents a 2-pound bag. At Hy-Vee, where you'll enjoy spending less to buy more.
Where there's a helpful smile in every aisle.
Calling all football widows, football fed-ups, and furniture buyers. Are you tired of football? Come to the Super Bowl of furniture sales at Manufacturers Furniture Showroom this weekend. We have hung huge Super Bowl discount tags on every item in stock. As a bonus, if you pay cash, we'll give you an additional 12% discount. Or with qualified credit, take 12 months to pay with no interest or carrying charges. You can save a lot of money on name brand furniture during the Super Bowl of furniture sales at Manufacturers Furniture Showroom, 221 63rd Street in Des Moines.
Ramsey Pontiac Subaru has over 200 new Pontiacs, all with low 7.9% financing right now.
Ramsey Pontiac Subaru, we sell excitement.
You're watching WHO TV Des Moines, Iowa's news center. And now, Scott Pope and Susie Robinette. Chief Meteorologist Mike Lozano. And Jeff Beimpour with sports. This is News Center 13 at 6.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining us. If you need cab service tonight in Des Moines, you may be out of luck. Many Des Moines cabbies are upset about some cost hikes and are on what they call an extended coffee break. We might call that a strike. Eileen Wickstead has been following this story and is live at the Des Moines International Airport, where there are usually a lot of cab drivers. Eileen, what's the situation?
Susie, I am at the Des Moines International Airport, where it is rush hour. A lot of flights are coming in with a lot of passengers, but there are no cabs here. As you mentioned, there are usually lots of cabs that are usually stacked up right behind me waiting for trips. At this hour, there are none. A good number of cab drivers here in Des Moines have put their vehicles in park and have taken an extended coffee break to show management they can absorb increased costs. It's a very complex issue that can all be traced back to the collapse of carriers' insurance. Brenda and Ron AIRHART own and drive a cab. Brenda works days, her husband drives at night. It hasn't been a bad way to make a living, but since carriers collapsed and new insurance rates are much higher, the AIRHARTs fear their days of driving a cab may be over.
We're just barely making it, but with the cost of the increase because of the insurance, we're not going to be able to make it.
Several other cab owners and drivers say the higher insurance rates and dispatch fees could put them out of business as well. Yellow and Capital cab companies are just two groups forced to find new coverage since carriers' insurance was ordered liquidated 8 days ago. The cab companies found new insurance through assigned risk pool, but at a price 500% higher. For Brenda and Ron, that means their insurance jumps from $9.25 per week to $55.50, a huge increase that has to be paid by someone. The cab companies are proposing two ways to make up for the higher cost of insurance. First, ask the Des Moines City Council to approve a 50-cent insurance surcharge per trip. Second, to increase the dispatch fees paid by drivers. That's money to cover meters, lights, and dispatchers. The fees would jump close to $80 for 24-hour service and $30 for 70 hours of service. The AIRHARTs say they can't afford the 24-hour fee, but they can't afford to drive their cab for only 70 hours.
We've had two increases in our dispatch in the last year. We've only had one increase in the meter. And with computerized cars these days, it just costs too much for the overhead.
In a show of solidarity, more than 50 cab owners and drivers met this morning to make a battle plan to fight the dispatch fee increase. Jack Wilson, who manages the cab companies, would not comment on camera, but he did say they don't understand the situation, and he's not going to put anyone out of business. A committee of cab drivers tried to meet with Wilson, but to no avail. So late this afternoon, the cab drivers decided talking was useless, and it's time to take action.
I'm not going to suggest anything but what the rest of you had suggested, and that is to take a coffee break for the rest of the afternoon.
Although the cab drivers are not members of a union, the extended coffee break is their version of going on strike. About 3/4 of all cab drivers are joining in, including Brenda and Ron. They say they'll leave their cab in park until Wilson agrees to sit down and meet with them. Many cabbies said they don't want to go out on strike. They really don't want to do it, but this is the only recourse they have. They say it's hard enough to make a living while driving a cab, let alone leaving their vehicles idle. But they say this is the only way to make their point and to get someone to listen to them. Reporting live from Des Moines International Airport, I'm Eileen Wickstead.
All right, Eileen, thanks very much. Consumer advocate Ralph Nader blew into town today and then blew the socks off the casualty insurance business. Nader says insurance companies have raised their rates by billions of dollars just to increase their profit margins, and he says that's not right. Allison Gregory caught up with him today during a speech at the Iowa Academy of Trial Lawyers.
As is his style, Ralph Nader is very vocal about his latest target, insurance companies. He claims premium gouging and arbitrary cancellations by insurance companies are two of the biggest consumer ripoffs. He says in 1 year, insurance premiums went up by almost $25 billion, more than $100 for every man, woman, and child in the U.S. Insurance companies say high jury awards have forced higher premiums and cancellations, but Nader says unjustified awards are few and far between. Nader says curbing those profits won't take money out of Iowa, but will help other struggling businesses.
There are a lot more small businesses and farm businesses and municipalities and counties and hospitals and mass transit systems and daycare centers in Iowa than are insurance companies.
Nader says he wants to see some federal changes. He'd like insurance companies subject to antitrust laws. They've been exempt since 1944. He says there should be legislation allowing smaller businesses to self-insure, and there should be federal reinsurance. He also wants to see a federal insurance office to keep an eye on companies.
If Senator Grassley would stand up in the Senate next week and say, I want to support a federal reinsurance bill and a federal bill to facilitate self-insurance, the signal would come back to Iowa.
Nader blasted the Iowa legislature for thinking about limiting damage awards. He says it should be looking out for Iowa people who are victimized. Allison Gregory, News Center 13.
And another group of people in Iowa who are certainly feeling the pinch from the insurance rates is the grain elevator operators. They've been hit hard during the current ag situation because rates have simply gone sky high. Well, as promised, the Iowa House Ag Committee is trying to do something to help the operators out, and today approved a plan to give operators more time to get surety bonds before they have to give up their elevator licenses. The committee also wants to set up a special fund to protect farmers whose grain is stored at the state's 800 elevators.
Those of you who owe back taxes to the state of Iowa are going to get a chance to pay up without being penalized. The Iowa House gave approval today to a tax amnesty plan designed to bring in more money to the state treasury. Brooks Humphreys has the story.
The plan, which has proven successful in other states, is fairly simple. If you owe the state back taxes of any kind, the state would allow you to pay what you owe plus only half of the usual interest, and there would be no penalty. You could do this between September 2nd and October 31st of this year. After that, there would be stiffer penalties for paying late and increased enforcement efforts. Today in the Iowa House, backers of the plan argued it may be the only way to get some of the $140 million owed the state.
But this bill is not to punish delinquent taxpayers or delinquent tax-paying officers of corporations. It isn't that at all. It's to give them a period where they can fess up, pay their taxes, and not get the usual punishment.
However, many of the conservative Republicans in the House argued tax amnesty wouldn't be fair to those who pay when they're supposed to.
People who have been out there working and supporting their families and paying their taxes and doing all the good things that the majority of Iowans do are, in my opinion, they're being shortchanged on this.
But despite Representative Hummel's objections, the bill won approval 58-27 and goes on to the Senate. If you do owe back taxes in Iowa, you might be getting your affairs in order for the September-October amnesty period. The bill is going on to the Senate next week, where there is good support for it, and the governor also supports the bill. Brooks Humphreys, News Center 13.
Coming up next from News Center 13, the search continues tonight for a suspect in the robbery of a Beaverdale bank.
We'll be right back with the details. Don't go away.
This week at your neighborhood Super Value, buy Pampers disposable diapers. Small, medium, super, or large super. Only $7.99 a box. Gino's frozen pizza, all varieties, just 69 cents for a 10-ounce box. From the meat department, buy Tyson Grade A whole fryers, just 47 cents a pound. Now through Tuesday at Super Value.
free financing for 1 full year when you invest in the legendary quality of Curtis Mathes video and audio gear now. No interest for 1 full year when you save on Curtis Mathes color consoles, portables, VCRs, and incomparable Curtis Mathes stereo component systems, all with the exclusive 4-year limited warranty. Use our money. Free financing. No interest for 1 full year to qualified buyers now at the Curtis Mathes Home Entertainment Center, 4347 Merle Hay Road.
Homemakers East and Homemakers West are jammed with furniture items that we overbought. Sofas, sleepers.